Where are Arsenal right now? Prepared? For me, not quite. In our final form tactically, I certainly hope not. Finished adding to the squad? Again, for me, we shouldn't be. Fully fit? Our strongest 11 aren't quite yet. And there are still a lot of these unanswered questions as pre-season has come and now nearly gone. We take on Manchester United in just over a week's time at Old Trafford, and today's video is going to look at what that readied Arsenal team needs to look like. We're not just casting an eye over the Villarreal game, but pre-season as a whole. How Mikel Arteta has begun to adjust to our two new forward recruits, but how, particularly if we are to avoid those familiar stumblings that we had in the second half display against Villarreal, there has to be more. New solutions, ones I'm going to provide and analyse, and also shifting the squad's brains, how they're wired on the pitch, and also letting certain players just play. Welcome back to the Harvey Gratian YouTube channel. I'm so glad you found us or are joining us once again. And we have seen signs, positive ones, but for a team, I think, who have added two players in Madueke and Viktor Gyökeres who come to life through intense running, through urgency, through a hunger to shoot. Let's talk about, in detail, what else we need to do. This isn't a video that justifies some of the tactical choices we've seen from Arteta this pre-season, but it's vital, I think, that we start with those changes for Gyökeres and for Madueke that we have seen on the pitch, the ones Arteta has admitted must occur if progress is to be made, and ones new assistant coach Gabriel Heinze will also be pushing for. I want to start with the largest sample that we've had of Viktor Gyökeres in an Arsenal shirt so far, namely those first 45 minutes against Villarreal, where, and we can debate whether it hit or miss, there was a difference trying to happen. Let's look at our first broken sequence of play. With Gyökeres playing instead of Kai Havertz, Raya has to launch it instead to Merino, who basically within the first 20 seconds has won a flick on, looped in a first time cross, and is found in an open pocket here, with Gyökeres and Martinelli crisscrossing and the space for Merino to swivel and release the Swede into. It's not my first choice, but Gyökeres hanging off Merino's shoulder, partnering Merino's quick releases with his immediate sprints in behind, makes the most, I think, of these staggered vertical connections in attack. This is a passage from the Newcastle game where we get a sense of what this dynamic looks like between two players in Gyökeres and Merino, that is, whose natural tempo is an equivalent to how we toggled the speed in that first half against Villarreal. Miles here is in those same deep, often first receiver zones, which suits Calafiori at left centre-back because it tempts him to go roaming a bit. Miles actually declines hitting Kai Havertz in behind and instead punches it through to Merino, who, although not a carrier, loves to turn quickly and knock the ball in behind like this. It's actually cut out, and this shows the value of losing the ball a bit more, because we regain it. Calafiori has already burst through the half space and is now alive to Trossard's intentions. Calafiori receives, spins, creates chaos, and Trossard on the knockdown has an opening. Calafiori, please stay fit. I've mentioned losing the ball more there, and in order to create these windows and loose bounces where Gyökeres thrives, that intent to initially play inside the block, regardless of whether it's successful, will help us. Look at this from the Villarreal game. Nwaneri gets motoring, and just on a sideline, I loved how confident Nwaneri looked when receiving with someone pressing behind him against Villarreal, and how he bought himself time with leveraging with his arms or feinting one way to open up the pitch the other and drive inside. And as he grows physically, Nwaneri, he can begin to do this higher up the pitch and against different, more physical opposition. But back to this passage, White and Saka go out to in, and White's, again, intent to play Saka. Let those connections come back. Even though it's cut out, look how the Villarreal player has to stretch to get the ball. It ricochets, Nwaneri launches the counter press, and on the regain, it means we don't have to go around the block, but can cut through it quickly side to side. We've got Merino playing at the tempo that's right for him, and he underlaps and cuts it back and almost finds Gyökeres. Stop there though, because this is instructive of how not to find Gyökeres in the box or with cutbacks. We aren't trying to find an aerial monster with leap timing, etc., etc., but we're trying to find a scrappy opportunist who loves quick rips on goal or first-time shots from loose balls. Fire this on the ground, Mourinho, instead. And the same goes for our cutbacks throughout the entire game. There were so many of them. Here, Gyökeres has got in front of his man. Saka's at the back post, and Nwaneri is in that zone where he can mop up. Fire it on the ground, Arsenal. And lots of these cutback opportunities incidentally came from high turnovers, that almost fabled term now when we come to talk about some of our attacking inefficiencies. And on the surface, you could say that we appeared to waste more against Villarreal, but this wasn't the case for me. Our problems converting turnovers into shooting chances were always about creating separation after the turnover, or showing the right level of hunger to work an opening. Both were not an issue though against Villarreal. Look here, after a failed pass inside, Norgaard, who I think his level of snap and awareness off ball have been really impressive in pre-season so far. He regains it, and again, we're not going around but through the block, side to side quickly. White's overlap is additive, Saka drives, but again, fire it instead. In this example, we turn it over high, Mourinho looks to accelerate, White's overlap creates separation once again, and the cutback is in the air, which does suit Mourinho's game here, and he almost gets on the end of it. But understanding Gyökeres' runs is more a final third connections thing, and that's what went wrong in the first half, as opposed to anything more structural. We will adjust, but either way, we need to get used to releasing him in openings like this, which do often come at a premium. This is the final example I'm going to use of this. White's balls, I think, over the top of a block, or his switches, add another dimension, of course, to our play. But it's Saliba this time, clipping in Saka. Norgaard is once again first to the breakdown, Mourinho picks it up, and Gyökeres is interested. It's fired into Martinelli, who rolls it into the Swede, who, other than that really nice bit of footwork earlier on, gets his best opening in the match to work a shot and an angle as he knows best. So I think my frustration coming out of the Villarreal match, and I'd be intrigued to know your thoughts below, was how after showing this intent to change our speeds, we let two rather uncharacteristic goals force us to go back to what was the more familiar in the second half, and that also felt maybe not catalysed, but helped by Arteta's subs. But I don't want to rehash critiques that we've all heard before, but instead look at how, with Gyökeres and Madueke, with Rice, with Odegaard, with Zubimendi too, how a better balance can be struck, especially considering Zubimendi has a case of being our best performer in pre-season. I made the case after the AC Milan game that this feels like Zubimendi's team already, and as he plays more minutes, I think that feeling is only going to strengthen. Zubimendi is brilliant at initiating those quick, direct, vertical attacks I've already spoke about Gyökeres feeding off. He might play a cutter from deep or clip a ball over to a runner or, and this is one of those lovely details he has in his game, how he pushes high inside blocks, creating opportunities for first-time passes into spaces that are only briefly left open, or little dribbles that may set up clever, incisive passes. Picture Madueke switching out for Nelson and charging onto this slip ball here. There also isn't the same sense of rushing it into the final third when Zubimendi plays for me, especially when he's left alone a bit more in the six. He'd rather keep the ball in the middle, working angles, changing his heights, waiting for gaps, and then launching faster, hopefully more decisive attacks when the time is right. It's a very small sample, but this looks like he's helping free up players ahead of him more, and in situations like this, which is an image that we've come to affiliate with, an isolated left-hand side bereft of ideas, there now, for me at least, becomes a better logic behind it that I'm going to try and speak you through now. Madueke's skill set, I think, is looking more and more like first choice for these kind of situations. Picture Norgaard swapped out for Zubimendi, taking a bit more interest higher up in the pockets. The space Rice is bulldozering off-ball runs makes is often underused, but if Madueke can't explode down the line, he will take this kind of opening infield gleefully and duck and drive. And then if you add Calafiori squeezing in that left centre-back where Kivior is, and how this setup might reform as well against a much deeper defence, suddenly Rice's pinning doesn't seem as redundant. Madueke can stretch with threat, Keeley, from the touchline, meaning those inside pockets widen for the left back who has hopefully been pushed higher by Zubimendi's presence. Miles can be found in interesting areas, Calafiori can try his weird and wonderful things, and suddenly Arteta's Only changed personnel, I think, but the left-hand side is looking full of a few more ideas once more. Because this was not the case for the whole team, I think, in the second half against Villarreal or against Spurs. I'd say this too, if Arteta is still looking for people to join Zubimendi in midfield deeper, aside from the left-back tucking infield, this is normally the 8s who drop and progress things wide. I want players joining Zubimendi who complement his intelligence, his speed of operations, his little bursts on the ball. In other words, what he cannot do or what he's not there to do. This means we're looking for whipped crosses that can be from White deep in the half space, or Rice if he's allowed to access the right hand side, or Mikel Merino's early balls. You're looking for long shots again, Declan Rice, or keeping Nwaneri higher around zone 14, letting him allow the ball to run across his body. You also want those depth runs from midfield, or more punchy carries that travel further. That comes from Lewis-Skelly, for example, who can also replace Zubimendi's tempo if the Spaniard makes those movements higher up. Or an Eze, who, as I've said before, has become pretty essential for me in terms of getting a passer, a releaser, a creative focal point through the left-hand side to complement our other signings. I think if things, and they have done at times this pre-season, do become inevitably horseshoey, a term I don't really like, to be honest, it's because Odegaard has joined deeper, opening up onto his left foot, or if Rice is more ahead of the ball, pinning with his back to goal. I want Rice changing his heights with the left back more regularly. I want Zubimendi springing those little shifts left to right, which may allow Rice to change sides, to offer legs or strong-footed runs or deliveries from deep on the right-hand side, or cheat his way more central to shoot. Take this example from last season, which actually comes as an example of Rice on our left-hand side still, but I can easily here switch Jesus out for Madueke, who gives us that wide 1v1 threat in this image. I can switch Trossard for Gyökeres as someone who isn't Rice, pinning inside the box, and Calafiori in this case is the left-back punching it through to Declan Rice, who has space to open up and shoot. I'm not someone who is necessarily calling for a change in sides between Odegaard and Rice, but I understand, and I think it's a justified frustration, that people want a more creative usage of players, of which examples I've just given, and plans and strategies that need to shake up the current regimes. I don't think Odegaard should be a nailed starter for these game states all the time, for example, particularly with Zubimendi now in the team, nor do I think our outer possession shape has to stay the same. Look at how we've tweaked the press to accommodate Nwaneri in right centre mid, for example. Nwaneri has stayed marking a pivot, Gyökeres has jumped and arced his run, Merino has joined in behind, but our wingers are the ones now moving onto the opposition wide centre-backs, with our full-backs backing this up. This might actually as well be much more conducive to winning the ball and setting traps high in midfield, having Gyökeres and our wingers, if they're the jumpers, already high, ready to receive passes from Odegaard, Nwaneri, Zubimendi, Rice, Merino, whoever. So work has to be done. There needs to be a trust, I think, from Arteta and the coaching team and the players actually in Zubimendi's ability to free up nice kinds of domino effects on the ball. There needs to be a willingness to turn up that dial on our speed and not revert to type, which isn't a bad type, by the way. It's just about having alternatives. And as soon as we feel a bit panicked and need a goal, not to revert back into that familiar sort of sense on the ball. It's about being okay to lose the ball a bit more, to recognise that a Merino left centre mid game is not always the same as a Declan Rice one. New ideas are also needing exploration in the market. Again, Eze has gone from a great third attacker option to a must-have, and frustration will inevitably come if these are the same questions we are still asking and the answers we are still demanding come the middle of the season. It is key to emphasise, though, that I hope to see a more Plan A full-strength side against Athletic Bilbao tomorrow, because there are a lot of still, like I said, unanswered questions that we maybe just need a larger sample for, although I understand it's hard to say that with one game or one pre-season friendly to go to the start of the season. And I hope, though, that we begin to see, especially in the game tomorrow, some more of the ideas that I've offered today, but also some of the templates and the tweaks we've already seen this pre-season. That is all from me for today. I will be back very, very soon with another video. I really hope you've enjoyed or have learnt something or have found it informative in any way, shape or form. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks so much. See you later.